don't want to waste a minute of today. My name is Tom Greaves, and I've been asked to moderate the session today. Last time we met together, I was presenting Project Red, which is a research project of 1,000 schools about how to transform them through the use of technology, and so we're going to touch on that a little bit maybe throughout the day, but the stars of our show are our three superintendents here who are going to be panelists, and you. We're hoping that this is a very interactive session, and I've given them instructions that if I start talking too much, they're supposed to raise their hand and take over. But being good superintendents, they'll have no problem doing that. So I'd like to introduce Damian LaCroix from Howard Suamico at the far right end there, Matt Akin from Piedmont, it's going to be a tough day, and Alan Lee from Baldwin County. And I think you've met them before in other sessions. And I would like to thank all of you for coming. And we're talking today about making the digital transformation. And I'd like to know where you all are. First of all, who are you, just for the benefit of the audience that's going to be watching this videotape later on? How many of you are superintendents? And so for the camera, that's 37% of the audience. How many of you are other school officials? 12%. How many of you are in schools, teachers or other people at a school or district level? 0%, near as I can tell. How many of you are in the business world? 21%. I'm going to ask somebody important to add all those up in a minute. How many of you are in the research side of life? Researchers? 6%. And government? Consultants? Did I leave anybody out? Foundations. Yes. 21%. That's not quite true. So we're glad you're here. All of you that are in the school side of life here, how many of you are novices at making the digital transformation? There's something that you're just starting this year perhaps, or you're going to do it in the next year or two. How many would that be that are novices? No novices. This is good. So throw away your presentation and go to plan B here. How many of you are what I'll call emerging, that you've been doing this for maybe a couple of years? I'm not sure you've got it perfectly yet, but you've been down the road enough that you've got quite a few scars. So we've got 4 or 5 that are 6, 7, 8, 9. And how many of you would be experts, that you should be up here on the panel instead of me? Where are the rest of you then? Did I leave out any category? How about well on the way? How about well on the way? Quite a few, 7 or 8 that are well on the way. Well, I'm glad that we're together. I think that one of the good things about the league meetings, and I'm thankful for Adam and Sarah for arranging this, is that they bring together an excellent combination of people. So we have people that in the schools, we also have companies. We're all working together for the same ends on these things. And one of the biggest things we can do is learn from each other. This digital transformation is something that we don't have a lot of models for. Many of you that are superintendents, if you talk about many of the other things you've had to do in life, say textbook adoption or new band uniforms, or you name it, you've been down that road before 100 times and you know how to do it. When we talk about digital transformations, there are not a lot of experts in that area. Not a lot of people have done it. Very few people have done it more than once. Most people have not seen it done right. And so it's sort of like Lewis and Clark going out west to explore it. You may or may not know that there's somebody 10 miles south of you that has done a lot of that. And I think that one of the things that we can do is work together. It's one of the things that's happening in Project Red this year, is that working together with groups of school districts to make this journey a lot easier. Now, I know that many of you are convinced or you wouldn't be here. Others, and many of you that are not here, have read someplace that this is a fraud, a hoax, it's never going to work. I was reading a brand new article that a research study meta-research of 143 studies, and it concluded that there's very little evidence that digital technologies would work, particularly in mathematics. And I thought, well, this is interesting, and they even quoted me a few times in there, and I'm reading through it, and I noticed one of the studies was a school that I funded the study, and it was 1999. And I thought, well, this is a fast-moving world, and the school in 1999 was really ahead of the game back then, but it certainly wouldn't be today. And so I think it's a lot of the naysayers, and I'm saying this to you because you're going to get asked this question many times, but a lot of the naysayers are working on data that's old. And they're not working on where we are today, or they're not working on where we are going to be in a year or so, because there's a lot of really cool things that are in the hopper, people doing things that are going to come along. The second thing is that because there's been a lot of, people trying things that didn't know quite how to do it, many times there aren't good results. And so if you're doing a survey or the newspaper reporter and they go pick out 3 or 4 from random, you might find that the results aren't very good. That doesn't mean you can't get good results. And one of the things that probably the most important lesson from Project Red was that first of all, not very many people are doing it right, but those that are doing it right are getting spectacular results. And so I hope today that one of the things we can walk away with is to learn how to get those spectacular results, and then also help each other, and then transfer this to other people coming down the path. So as part of our theme today, as we go through this, we'd like to talk about this process of digital transformation of schools, and maybe start at the top. And one of the most important things in this, the most important thing perhaps, is leadership. I'm grateful for the superintendents that have taken the time to come and also to be on the panel. The first thing that the leaders have to do in this is they've got to set a vision. The people need to know where they're going. What are the results? Many times I call on schools and I say, what's your vision? I particularly remember calling on a principal, not to pick on the principal, but I won't say their name, but I said, if your vision of where you could be in 3 or 4 years, we have a lot of people, time, and money, and she said, I would like to have a clicker for every kid in 6th grade. I thought, well, we're going to have to work on vision a little bit here in this school here. But I'd like to turn now to our panel. We're going to talk to the panel, and then we're going to talk to you and talk about how you set your vision, what your visions are, and as you first speak, maybe take a few minutes in addition to introduce yourself and your school district, and Alan will start.
When Tom was doing his survey of expertise, if you'll notice when he asked for the hands of the novices, I held my hand up. So you can imagine my reaction when Sarah talked to me about being on a panel with Tom Greaves as the head of it to talk about my OnetoOne Initiative. I told her it was like taking my clothes off in front of him, because he's going to know whether I'm telling the truth and whether I know what I'm doing. But the most valuable piece of being part of the League of Innovative Schools, in my opinion, is what we can learn from each other. And so I committed to Sarah that I would bare my soul, mistakes and faux pas and everything else that have come with our initial initiative, which we refer to as Digital Renaissance, and hopefully you all can learn from that, or you can find ways to help me learn from that. So I'm going to start right from the beginning. First of all, I'm in Baldwin County, Alabama. It's right down on the Gulf Coast. We have 29,500 students. We are growing. In this past year, we grew 1,200 students. It's a very vibrant economy, and maybe the only place in Alabama that's growing that fast. I've been in the business for quite a long time. I'm not sure there's anybody else in the room that's been in it as long as I have, but I can tell you that over the many decades, it seems that we have had one initiative, one new idea, one solution after another come to us. And yet, as I worked in Virginia in my school district there, which I was very proud of what we'd accomplished, my primary focus was making sure my schools made AYP. And the things happening in the classroom didn't look any different from what they looked like when I started teaching over 40 years ago. And when I moved to Alabama, the board and the community that accepted me into that area thought that they were going to get pretty much what they'd always had. They wanted all the characteristics they want out of a superintendent. So you don't get caught driving drunk, and you don't do this, and you don't do that. But really, they didn't expect any major changes to come about. And then I had the joyous opportunity to visit Mark Edwards in Mooresville and to walk into classrooms to see 100% of the students in those classrooms engaged in their own learning. Not necessarily learning for the teacher, but learning for themselves and excited about what they were doing. And when I listened to the statistics that Mark was able to provide me of the successes they had had, it was one of those aha moments that I never thought I was going to have in education. As an early science teacher, I tried to do project learning, but without technology. And the resources I had were the same ones that you had when you started teaching. We had a textbook on a particular topic like volcanoes. We'd have a half a dozen to 10 books in a library that covered volcanoes, and they had my brain, and that's the only resources that they had. And yet in Mooresville, I saw something entirely different. I saw students who believed that they could take control of their own learning. And so I left Mooresville going back to Alabama, knowing that we had laid off 549 people in the last 4 years. We'd cut our budget by $82 million. And I went back into a school district where I knew something had to happen, something had to change, because we couldn't continue to do what we've always done in classrooms. And so what I set about to do was to create a different vision, a different cultural belief in our schools and our communities about what could happen in schools if we could only find a way to support it. And I knew that Matt was doing the same sort of thing in Piedmont. And I knew from the work that I'd read on Project Red, there were other people accomplishing this. So I set about to try to change the attitudes and the beliefs of not only my school board, but my district administrators, and then the community, particularly the business community. I started speaking to chambers and rotaries and everybody I could speak to. And within a matter of 2 months, I had an opportunity to start a one-on-one initiative in one of our 7 high schools. And we heard from the naysayers. They will have them stolen, they will break them, they will not do anything but just do worksheets on computers. And we did what we shouldn't have done, which everybody told me we shouldn't do, which was to introduce the computers into the classroom without lots and lots of professional development. But the teachers in that building had been under warning, under No Child Left Behind, and they'd gone through a transformation. And they knew what it was to change the instruction in their classrooms. And so we introduced it into that school, and in the first year we cut dropout rate by 47%. We saw an increase in attendance rate. We saw a reduction in behavioral referrals out of the classroom by 62%. We saw amazing things happen, and after the first semester I reported this to the board and the community, and people said, we don't want this at one high school, we want it at all high schools. And we're willing to spend the money to do it. And so we now, this fall, have put a Mac Air in the hands of every student, every high school student in the county. We have over 10,000 computers out right now. One of our communities, Gulf Shores, its city council is so behind this that they gave the schools $950,000, nearly $1 million, to take it on into the lower grades, down to the 3rd grade or 4th grade level. And just this week, we got a grant from a foundation to put it in the elementary school in Orange Beach, which did not have the funding for that. Across the county, the vision is driving us at this point. The vision is taking us where we want to go. Have we done everything correctly? No. We had infrastructure issues, just as I'm sure you do. I have a brand new chief technology officer. I have a brand new financial officer who happens to be 28 years old. He's got a $260 million budget. He's never been in the schools before, so we've got transformation going on. But it's exciting to hear students, and that is, to me, my dissertation work was qualitative, not quantitative. And when I have a high school student look at me and say, I don't use paper, I don't use a pencil, I don't use a textbook anymore. When I have a girl tell me that she has an hour commute from her home to the school every day, and she uses that time to study and learn electronically. And when I have a young man tell me, Dr. Lee, the reason that this is so good is I no longer have to wait to learn. To me, what this does, whether it's in my school district or Matt's or yours, this is the empowerment of children. It is the freeing of children to seek and get an education that they want, and so many of them want it. When a child expresses frustration of having to wait to learn, that is the vision that I want to carry forward. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
It's tough being between Alan with all his experience, and then Damian's here with charts and boards and websites, and I'm just going to talk, and I'll try to talk quick.
You got the accent, though.
I have that accent. And the number one football team in the nation.
It's the rest of you that have the accent. These are
That's right. I didn't even know I had an accent. Thanks for pointing that out. Just to give you, I'll go quick. We're in year 3 of a one-to-one initiative that's not about a one-to-one initiative. It's about a small town in the South that you may not know that, we were formed around a textile industry that no longer exists. Our unemployment rate is too high to count. We were in a dying community, and I've been superintendent 10 years, and I don't know, about 4 years ago, we brought our team together, and our vision from day one has been, how are we going to take a community that's dying and make it thrive again? And the one thing that we have going for us in our city is our school system. And so that's what it was about. It was about using technology to totally transform an educational system, but more importantly, to transform a community. And now we're working on transforming a state. So that's been our vision from day one. We all knew, and when I say we all, it wasn't just me and principals or me and teachers. We spent a lot of time meeting, and all of us have learned from Mark Edwards, but we spent a lot of time meeting with senior citizens groups, the ones that don't have grandkids, the ones that are complaining and say, why are you spending that money? Why don't they do it the way I did it? I learned fine. And I say all that to say we spent a lot of time on community buy-in, whether it was the senior citizens groups, whether it was parents, whether it was business groups, although there's not a lot in Piedmont, about what we were doing and our hope that it would transform the community. And like Alan said, I know the Project Red research talks about professional development, and we did a lot of professional development, but there's almost that there's no professional development for walking in the classroom on the first day and every kid in front of you has a MacBook, because at that point, it doesn't matter what you know how to use. At that point, all rules have changed. Everything has started over. And I think professional development is very, very important. But, if I had to go back, I think I would have done professional development on different things, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. So that's the vision. Just to the superintendents in the room, at the end of the day, it's about results. It doesn't matter what we think about AYP. It doesn't matter what we think about high-stakes testing. Right now, that's how we're judged. And I remember the night before the board meeting where we were approving the funding, we're 68% free and reduced lunch. And when I get stressed, I start doing this, and so when I get home at the end of the day, my hair's standing up, and my tech coordinator came in, and she said, Matt, what's wrong? And I said, everything's good. And she said, no, your hair's standing up. And I said, well, I'm kind of banking my career on this. Because I started, even though I don't look it, I started my superintendency young, and I need to stay a superintendent to feed my kids. And so, we couldn't afford that down cycle after the first year. Well, our test scores went down because we put in computers, but give me a couple of years and they'll go back up. I couldn't afford for that to happen. So I'll talk just a second about results. The kids that we worry about, the free and reduced kids, especially the at-risk students, our results after a year for Alabama High School graduation exam, which is a pretty tough test. It's how AYP is determined for high schools. Our percentage of kids that are free and reduced lunch, the proficient percentage went up 20% in reading, 15% in math. But more importantly, and I said some of this yesterday, the kids that were scoring advanced, not just passing, but scoring advanced, math which they say is the hardest area. Math shot up 23%. Reading shot up 10%. Those were kids that were going from being just proficient or not even passing to scoring advanced. Our ACT scores, we don't have enough. That ACT doesn't provide the breakdown for free and reduced, but for us. But minority kids went up 5%. Female students went up 5% on the ACT scores. And I say all that to say we didn't put computers in and say, okay, let's go to this remediation site and work on grad exam, or let's go to this website and work on ACT. We didn't even talk about ACT, or we didn't talk about scoring it. Let's all score advanced on the test. All we talked about was teaching and learning. But when you put the technology in kids' hands, they're engaged, and they'll study on the bus or they'll study after school. So I think our numbers are truly about engagement, and I think that's everybody in here realizes if we can engage kids, we can win this battle. Just finally, one thing that happened to us that my teacher, we had a group in 2 weeks ago, and I had a teacher that they asked what was the most important thing that's happened, and she said, well, it's the grant that we got that gave internet access at home, because we were one of 19 districts in the country that got a grant from the FCC after our first year, where when our kids go home, they have internet access. We're 68% free and reduced. 50% of households didn't have a computer in it when they first took them home. But the thing was, when they went home, they didn't have internet access. And we'd do all those things. We'd keep the schools open longer and all that. But at the end of the day, I don't care if you're rich or poor. You ought to have the access. Every kid ought to have the access my kids have. And that's truly been the game changer in Piedmont, is when our kids go home, we actually built a network over our city. So it doesn't matter if they go home or they go to the park. Wherever they open it up, they've got internet access. And I think that's really what, in year 3, the reason we're truly taking it to the next level is because that access is provided.
Thank you very much. Would you pass the microphone down to...
Good morning, everyone. Can I just ask you to write a few things down here? I'm going to give you our web address. It's www.hssd.k12.wi.us. It's the website right here. I'll be referring to a few things on the website. Then I'm going to ask you to write down the following. This is a word association that I did with a group of 5th graders a couple years ago that really was the impetus for our digital transformation. School is blank. Then I'm going to ask you to write down the following. Leadership. This relates to Tom's introductory remarks. Leadership is a lot of things, but 2 things I'll stress relative to our digital transformation is leadership is blank and leadership is blank. So Howard Suamico School District, suburban Green Bay, a nice community with nice families and nice kids in a great part of America. And yet, I'm in the lunchroom a couple years ago. My 6th grader had a birthday. Abraham is his name. We brought him Jimmy John's for lunch. Special occasion. I'm hanging out with him. He's got 7 friends at the table with him, all boys. And for some reason, I felt prompted to ask the following question. I said, guys, let's do a little word association. Okay, and they know I'm the superintendent, so this is no mystery because, I got my face plastered on I'm the website guy, according to the kids. So I said, when I say the following, I want you first thing that comes to mind, school is blank. Okay, what do you think they said to me? Boring. Keep going. That was the dominant theme. School is boring. School is prison. School is jail. School is something I do to pass the time so I can get home and do the things I really am interested in doing. My son, because he knows where his allowance comes from, said, school is great. And I knew that wasn't totally true, but that really disturbed me. I took that back to my administrative team and I said, you guys, why don't you go out to your lunchrooms and just start talking to kids? Ask them how they feel about school. And again, we're in Apple Valley. Good school district, good families, good kids, good teachers. And yet the response was a little alarming to me. And so that wasn't the impetus, but it was a major contributing factor in the journey that we've been on for the last couple of years. And then relative to Tom's comments, leadership is blank and leadership is blank. Okay, I think leadership is 2 things. First of all, leadership is coherence. That's not unique to me. I'm stealing that from Michael Fullen. And leadership is influence. If you can make coherence, if you can take the complex and make it simple, then you can influence. And that's our job as leaders, regardless of what your title, role, or position is here this morning. And so here's the statement that I want you really to think about. And this is your tweet comment for this morning. Okay? We can't educate today's students for tomorrow's problems with yesterday's schools. I'll say that again. Can't educate today's students for tomorrow's problems with yesterday's schools. And so if that's true, if you agree with that statement, then how is it that we make this digital transition? And the title of this presentation is Making the Digital Transition. And so you can't make the digital transition unless you can achieve coherence. And once you achieve coherence, you can begin having influence within your respective realms of responsibility. And so as I thought about this today, another metaphor is leadership is like a big jigsaw puzzle. Anybody do jigsaw puzzles in here? Okay, how do you do a jigsaw puzzle? What are the strategies? There's a leadership lesson here. Yeah, the edges first, right? Okay, you dump all the pieces on the table. That's our challenge, right? Don't you feel that way sometimes? You walk in on Monday morning, get all the pieces on the table. Where do you start? Okay, well, you look at the picture on the box. You have a vision. Okay, Tom talked about that. As a school district, we have a vision. I'm just going to pass these around. If you would just, like every 2 or 3 people, just share them. I don't have enough for everyone. Our vision is we will excel in the development of productive, responsible, civic-minded adults who prosper and serve. That's the point on the horizon that we're striving to attain. So like a jigsaw puzzle, all the pieces and the parts are on the table. You look at the vision, the picture of the box, and then you start with the corners, right? You get the foundational pieces in place. And that's all I really have time to talk about here this morning. I'm going to show you some of the foundational pieces of the puzzle for the Howard Suamico School District. So to me, it begins with vision and constantly talking about our vision and then its mission and beliefs. This is the way you can orchestrate your digital transformation. Or maybe you're already in a digital transformation. You just need to kind of rethink, give it a mental framework. This is my mental construct or framework. So our mission as a school district, I talk about this all the time, no matter where I'm at. We will work together with families and community to ensure that our students have the knowledge and skills to succeed in a changing world. Okay? Can anybody disagree with that? Any group that I go in front of, we will work together with families and community to ensure that our students have the knowledge and skills to succeed in a changing world. Then we have 6 beliefs, and the only one I want to comment on this morning is number 6 on the handout. I gave all of our teachers this on August 28th at the in-service and just challenged them to really begin to know it better. And belief number 6 is we will provide responsive and safe environments that engage learners. Okay, that's what technology does. It gives us a vehicle to engage learners. And then our board works on policies. And then they delegate the policies to me. I translate those policies into strategic plans. Those strategic plans are converted into what I call school improvement plans, SIPs. And then those school improvement plans ought to get translated into classroom practices. So if you're in the middle of a digital transformation or if you're looking to start a digital transformation and you don't know where to begin, this is the jigsaw puzzle. These are the corners of the puzzle that we've used to affect change within the Howard Suamico School District. And I wish I could talk about all of this. 2 things I'll point out is you need to have data. So if you go to our website under community survey results, last November we did a survey of our community. We asked many questions, but 2 in particular. What are the 5 greatest challenges the district will face over the next 5 years? Number 2 response was keeping up to date with technology. And then a related question is, how should finances be best allocated to ensure a quality education? Number 2 response was maintain up-to-date technology. So now it wasn't my idea. I was able to go back to the board and say, look at what the community is telling us. And then the board took this feedback and used it to rewrite their policies. So I'm not sure which card you have in front of you. You should have what are called ENDS policies on the back of your card. And you'll see within those ENDS policies the 5 C's. Critical thinking and problem solving, creativity, communication, collaboration, and citizenship. So our board Skyped with Ken Kay, and Ken Kay just beat us up in January. He looked at our policies and said they're all wrong. Okay, and really challenged our board to think differently. So our board got community feedback, rewrote its policies to reflect the 5 C's. I've taken their policies and integrated them into our strategic plans. We've got 4 strategic planning objectives. Those strategic plans then feed our school improvement plans, and ultimately we need to be impacting practices at the classroom level, or none of this really means anything to anyone. And then the outline of this, I thought of this morning. Here you got planning, right? Planning, doing, plan, do, check, and then I need to report back to the board. So you got this feedback loop. A lot of planning here, a lot of activity here. We need to be checking for results, and that's what I heard my colleagues talking about. And then we need to use that feedback to inform this loop. So plan, do, check, act, and then around the whole outside here, communicate, 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 and communicate. So last Friday I sent out this postcard to all of our staff, and it's got a picture of 2 schoolhouses on it with a barcode or a QR code, and it just says old school, new school. And that's all I gave them. And one of my principals said, well, aren't you going to tell them what to do with it? I'm like, no, Steve, that's the point. Okay, I know this is counterintuitive, but we're not going to spoon feed them anymore. And so about 20% of our staff maybe know how to use a QR code scanner. And then at the end of the day, I did break down and sent them this little 2-minute video that I'll show you, and then I'll stop talking here. So if we jump, this is my message to our staff about our digital transformation.
Hi, I'm Howard Swamico School Superintendent Damian LaCroix. Our mission as a school district is to work together with families and community to ensure that our students have the knowledge and skills to succeed in a changing world. That's why I'm excited to announce a new initiative this year in Howard Swamico. We're calling it our digital transformation. Basically what it means is that we're moving away from paper and pencil and textbook-driven style of learning to an environment like this that's high-tech, high-touch, and shows students using higher-order thinking skills in their learning process. Why make the change? Well, there are 5 big ideas I'd like you to consider. Big idea number 1 is that the world is changing. It's faster, more complex, more competitive, more connected. Big idea number 2 is that the economy has changed. We're living in a global knowledge and information age, and knowledge resources are as important as natural resources. Big idea number 3 is that workforce development needs have changed. Did you know that the average graduate this year will change jobs up to 14 times and change careers up to 9 times prior to the age of 40? We're preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist. Big idea number 4 is that students have changed. They're as comfortable with technology as you and I were with the paper and the pencil. Finally, big idea number 5 is that schools must continue to change in order to remain relevant and viable. Pundits ask the question, are we preparing students for their future or our past? This digital transformation is a declaration of the former. For more information, go to our website at hssd.k12.wi.us.
You've got it on our landing page, and if you click here, those 5 big ideas, you can find a PDF doc with those. So as leaders, we need to be modeling the way for our staff and showing them that risk-taking is okay, and that we're willing to take risks. So you just go back to our web page here. I lost it. And you'll see right here, digital transformation under community survey. So I'll give you a document that we're calling our digital transformation guidebook. It gives you a bunch of Q&A policies, 15 pages of everything we're doing in this area. And then you've got my video on there. You've got the PDF link. And then you've got a landing page that has we redid 42 pages of policies to make a transition from an acceptable use approach to a responsible use approach with our students and our staff. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, all 3 of you, and I hope you, along the way, picked out some things that are really important to you. I want to talk just a couple of them about change management, which is very important in this transformation. Surveys that are ways to engage everybody are a critical part of change management. The more that you can survey your audiences, all of your stakeholders, whether they be parents or teachers or students, you'll get them more engaged. I'm interested in what Matt said about he didn't want to have a drop in year one. It's common belief that if you put in technology, you're going to get a drop in year one. That only happens when you haven't prepared properly. Now, if you haven't prepared properly, it's still not too late. You're just going to have to work harder, but you don't have to have a drop in year one. And it's always good to see people that have come someplace and then they get a vision and then they go implement it. And they and look at the results that they had in Baldwin County, where was it 62% reduction in the drop in the behavior referrals, and how much in the dropouts?
47%.
47% reduction in dropouts. And according to the research that's out there, every dropout that goes on to college contributes $600,000 of tax revenue over their careers. Just one dropout would fund the whole school's program. So think about that. We've been given an extension, 10 more minutes. I want to move on now to the audience, and I want to move to a new topic, and that's finances. Call out how you finance, those of you that are in the process of doing this, how did you finance your initiatives? Just like to hear sort of calling out Linda over at Meridian, busy writing. How did you finance your one-to-one initiative?
The allocation of, part of the one-to-one is being funded by the state. The technology initiatives, reallocation of technology funds that we've had for quite a long time. Changing the focus of those.
I call that a little bit creative destruction. Did you stop doing things?
Yes, in fact, we put a hold on budget expenditures from that account until we could have a plan to move forward in the new direction.
I love reallocation because you can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody. Who else wants to speak up about superintendents that have done this? How did you fund it?
I just asked what you stopped doing.
We've embraced technology long ago, and we've just continued to fund the old model of 5 computers in every elementary classroom, a computer for every teacher, labs in all elementary schools, labs in all of the secondary schools. We're the first large district in the country to embrace online testing, so we put in mobile labs at the secondary. So partly because of the financial disaster that we were in, we didn't have that money for about 3 years, so we fell behind in replacing those, so it actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise to be able to say, now that we have that money again, we're not simply going to just continue to do business as usual, we're going to change the model. And we purposely began to plant pilots around the district using new technology to determine what worked in what settings, rather than an initiative that came from the top down. What's happened over 2 years is we now have schools and teachers saying, when can we get it? Can we be next? We want to move. So it's built its own enthusiasm and interest, which was much better than a directive or an initiative that came from the top down. So we're just in the process of
Other part of change management. Let them want it rather than forcing
exactly.
it. Who else? Yes. Tell us who you are, what school district?
Roanoke County Schools, Lorraine Lang. We've had a one-on-one in the high school for about 10 years now. And in the beginning, Virginia was giving a grant because they wanted to do all their testing online. So we took that money and we applied it to laptops. And we just continued locally, funding that. It's been a priority in our system. And we're taking textbook money and now using it for digital content.
Great. Next door.
I'm from Virginia, also Charlottesville, Virginia. And we started about 5 years ago. I was at a conference with Ian Jukes, and he was talking about brain research. And I called back to the division and told them to get a presentation together because we were going to city council to ask for some additional funding. And we started with smart boards in our classrooms, and I didn't want to do it as a phase-in model. I wanted every classroom to have them all at the same time. So our city council agreed, and they funded us over $1 million to put those in. I think it was in January. We got that in, and then we started to redirect some of our technology funds that came from the state. We used a bit of stimulus funding and redirection of funding to start a one-to-one initiative. and we have that in grades 6 through 12 in our high school. And we delayed the replacement of technology, the desktops, and with the vision of moving to cloud. And our teachers grumbled a little bit in the beginning, but then they came on board and realized the benefit of waiting a little to replace those desktops so that they can have cloud and they can have more portability. So that's where we are now. We have Citrix, we have OnetoOne Initiatives, we have iPads in our elementary schools, and we just finished a Google Summit, and we're excited about that, what might come next.
And it's sustainable.
Yes.
Great. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Larry Vick, Westbrook, Kentucky.
Let's pass that mic down there.
Larry Vick, Westbrook, Kentucky, 4,500 students. We started this initiative because we got about $2.5 million of stimulus funding that I couldn't stand to waste. Hiring teachers and keeping them 2 years and then laying them back off. And so we put $2.5 million into developing a digital curriculum. We had a digital team that actually prepared lessons for when we made the transition. So we spent an entire year doing some pilots with different kind of hardware, and then but we were writing these lessons so that on day one, when we rolled out 2,400 MacBook Airs, grades 5 through 12, we actually had lessons ready to go. And so I spent as much money on professional development as I have hardware, and I think it's paid big dividends. So we're actually putting $500,000 per year in the bank for the next phase of hardware upgrades. So anyway, I don't know where we'll go after that, but I figure after 8 years, we're not going back.
And so I think it's very interesting that you took a year to plan, did I hear that? And the professional development expended as much as the hardware. We all hear stories about you just put the hardware in there and everything will be fine. Who else?
Well, we have Napa Learning Foundation. They've been fantastic at helping sponsor this event here at Napa, and they contributed $20 million.
$12 million.
Well,
Over time. Not just Napa Learns, I would say community-based fundraising towards a very specific vision has been doing that. The other thing that we're starting to do is fee-for-service models. Schools as entrepreneurial entities, training. You heard Michelle Spencer talk about training yesterday. This school's doing that as well.
I think we have 2 mics, one for the audience and one for the video. So please pass them down and hand over there.
If I could just say one more thing. We're getting out of the hardware business. We're going all in with a single device. The cost of hardware to our students, and we're providing, we're raising dollars for infrastructure, secure wireless infrastructure.
Are you mandating the specifications of hardware?
We are giving options, so we give 3 redundant options for people to bring hardware to school. So one is, here's a Google Chromebook. Another one is a lease option. We're also redundant in classrooms with some in-classroom technology.
One of the most important things we saw when we introduced the OnetoOne Initiative was the leveling of the socioeconomic access to technology that digital provides. And we've been hesitant to even think about bring your own because we know that there'll be a lot of kids left out. Do you have an answer to that?
I don't have a good answer to that. I mean, the truth is some kids are sitting there with MacBook Pros and some kids are sitting there with their dad's hand-me-down. So that's just the reality of where we are right now. I think we got to get better about that. I think Google Chromebooks provide us a very inexpensive option and then does a lot of other things for our classroom.
That was actually my question. I wanted to hear more from districts who have bring their own technology that we're doing a lease option. I'd like to know more about lease.
Who else is doing bring your own that we could talk at the break? Anybody? Maybe connect up the 2 of you to break. We have just a few more minutes, and I wanted to come back around and talk about one more thing, and that's change management, change leadership, organizational development. How do you, as superintendents, how have you made this transformed in your schools? You can put it in there, but how do you get it to actually make a change in the classroom, in your system? I'd like to ask our panel just to shout it out. We only have 3 minutes to go around the room here, but anything in particular that you've done?
I boarded a teacher team. I have a digital renaissance team made up solely of teachers. And they're the ones that have defined what digital renaissance is, our one-to-one initiative, and how it will operate, what the goals and the objectives are. And that gave us a lot of buy-in from a lot of other teachers.
Yeah, I agree. It's teacher leadership. That's the one thing we've done that's made us successful is develop teacher leaders that's who's pushing our initiative forward.
Do you want to walk these around? Because we're
For those
going
of you who heard me yesterday, it's the principle, if you want to be the best, go see the best. There's no shame for me. There's no embarrassment in that. There's no ego about this. It's, others are doing a great job, and we need to go learn from them. And so as I've taken teacher and administrative and board teams out to Mooresville graded, we've been there 3 times now, you catch a vision very quickly. I remember talking to a 3rd grade girl in a class last fall as part of the Digital Promise. And I said to her, how would you feel if I took your laptop away? And, this is a quote. She said, I would be miserable, with lots of tone to it. It was a very genuine comment. I said, well, what was life like before you had the laptop? What was learning like? She said it was slow. And, wow. I mean, those are 2 powerful statements from a 3rd grader. And how many of our kids really feel that way? So take your teams, find out who's doing a good job, either locally, regionally, or nationally. Go see them, and then leverage your resources. I mean, for us to be able to Skype with Ken Kay, and we joined Ed Leader 21 and leveraging those resources, and then book studies internally. Right now I've got my cabinet reading Michael Fullen's Stratosphere, and we just continue to get stretched. The more we know, the more we learn, the more we know we don't know. And then my board is reading Understanding the Digital Generation by Michael Fullen. I'm telling you, if we as superintendents don't bring our boards with us, so much of this is just wasted time and energy because they can just sabotage the whole initiative in a couple of board meetings. So that's harder to do than I'm making it sound, but it's just 2-3 years in the making right here on the board behind me. So trying to exercise influence and coherence making for them.
It's sometimes hard to transform the whole country in an hour. So one last comment, and then I want to close, and we'll be on our way here.
I hear you say, I saw that's a great vision statement. Mm-hmm. I heard you say teachers. What about principals? Are they part of that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my belief.
Here's what we're doing this year. We're using an outside consultant. We've got 10 days of PD scheduled. Day 1, we've got a core group of teachers getting the training from the consultant. Talking about becoming a digital educator. That's the theme. Day 2, all the administrators get the same training that the teachers got in day 1. We're doing that 10 times this year. It's a big outlay of resources, but for our teachers to know that their principal is going through the same training the next day has made a pretty powerful statement to them.
Principals are extremely important. We can check with me at the break on that. We're out of time. I want to put my email address there. If I invited you all at the beginning to bring your questions. I would hope that if you have questions you didn't get answered, email me. I will rotate them to the panel and other people that may know the answers. And if you've got a question, we'd like to know it, and we'd like to get you the answer. If you go to the Project Red website, we now have a lot of things that are up there. One of them is a sample implementation plan, and you can go to that plan. And what we've done is produced a 1,500 line item Gantt chart project plan that if you don't know where to start, you can take this, download it, give it to your project manager, work through the process, and have your own plan. This plan won't fit anybody, but it could help everybody. I encourage you to use it. Let us know if you find issues or problems with it. The suggestions will fix it. I want to thank you all for coming and being here. It's been a great meeting. Appreciate our panel for what they've done, Sarah and Adam for arranging it. We're particularly thankful for the school district and Napa Valley for pulling this off. It's not easy, I know that. And let's, at the break, seek out the people that you've heard talk and see if you can exchange information. Thank you very much.